My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 29 years old, and for 8 years I built my life around one rule. Never owe anyone anything. Not banks, not credit card companies, not my parents, especially not my parents. I worked full-time, drove a 12-year-old Honda with a cracked dashboard, packed leftovers for lunch, and checked my credit score every month like it was a vital sign. I wasn't rich. I wasn't lucky. I was careful. That was why on a Friday afternoon in October, when an email from Midwest Community Bank appeared in my inbox with the subject line, I almost deleted it. I thought it was spam. Then I opened it and saw my full legal name. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen. I had never been to that address. I had never toured a house in Dayton. I had never applied for a mortgage. And I definitely had not agreed to borrow $100,000. My hands went cold so fast I dropped my coffee onto my desk. It spilled across a stack of patient scheduling forms, but I didn't move. I couldn't. My eyes were locked on one line near the bottom of the document. My parents. The same parents who had spent my entire adult life calling me selfish every time I said no. The same parents who once borrowed $4,000 for roof repairs, then used it to pay off my brother Ethan's credit cards. The same parents who laughed at my budget spreadsheet and said, "Natalie, you act like money is more important than family." I called the bank with my voice shaking. A woman named Grace answered. I told her there had been a mistake. She asked me to verify my social security number, my date of birth, my employer, and my current address. Then her tone changed. "Miss Brooks," she said carefully, "are you saying you did not authorize this mortgage application?" I swallowed. "I'm saying I've never seen this house, never signed these papers, and never applied for this loan." The line went quiet. Not normal quiet, legal quiet. Then Grace said, "You need to come in immediately, because according to our records, your parents are scheduled to close on this property on your behalf Monday morning. On my behalf." That phrase made me feel sick. By the time I reached the bank, Grace had printed the full application file. It was almost an inch thick. Inside were my pay stubs, my bank statements, a copy of my driver's license, my social security number, an email address I had never created, a phone number that belonged to my mother, and a signed document giving my father permission to attend closing for me. The signature looked like mine, almost, but I knew every curve of my own name. I knew the way I wrote the B in Brooks. Whoever signed that document had copied me carefully, just not carefully enough. Then Grace slid one more page across the table. It was an internal call note from my mother. They had planned for me to find out. They had planned for me to object. And they had already told the bank I might sound unstable when I did. Before I tell you what happened in that bank conference room, you need to understand something. My parents didn't wake up one day and decide to steal my name. They had been practicing for years, and I had been mistaking it for family. I was 16 the first time my parents asked me for money. Not asked, exactly. Asking implies you have the option to say no. My mother, Linda Brooks, sat at the end of our kitchen table with a stack of unopened bills spread in front of her like evidence in a trial. My father, Richard, stood by the sink, still wearing his dealership polo, his jaw tight, his keys clenched in one fist. "Natalie," my mother said softly, "we need you to be mature about something." That was always how it started. Mature, understanding, family-oriented. Words that sounded warm until you realized they were just prettier ways of saying useful. I was a junior in high school then, working 22 hours a week at a grocery store after classes. I bagged groceries, cleaned spills in aisle 6, smiled at customers who called me sweetheart, and saved every dollar in a checking account my parents had helped me open when I was 14. I thought the money was mine. I thought wrong. "How much do you have saved?" my father asked. I remember staring at him, confused. "For what?" "For the electric bill," he said, like I was stupid for not knowing. "We're short this month." My mother reached across the table and touched my hand. "It's only temporary, honey. Your father has a commission check coming next week." The commission check did not come next week. Or if it did, I never saw my money again. That was the first time, not the last. By the time I graduated high school, I had helped pay the electric bill, the phone bill, Ethan's basketball fees, my mother's car insurance, and one emergency vet bill for a dog Ethan had begged for and stopped taking care of after 2 months. Every time I was told the same thing. We're family. "Don't make this about money. You live under this roof too." But Ethan never had to contribute. Ethan could lose his part-time job at a pizza place because he hated being disrespected by customers, and my parents would call it stress. I could come home from a double shift with swollen feet and a chemistry test the next morning, and they would ask if I could pick up extra hours. When I got accepted to Ohio State, my mother cried in the living room. For about 3 minutes, I thought she was proud of me. Then she said, "How are we supposed to afford that?" Not "congratulations." Not "you worked so hard." Just panic. I ended up choosing a cheaper state school closer to home, taking out loans in my own name and working in the registrar's office between classes. My parents told relatives they were helping me through college. What they meant was that they let me keep sleeping in my childhood bedroom during breaks as long as I bought my own groceries and helped with Ethan's gas money. Ethan tried college for 1 semester. He failed 2 classes, dropped the other 3, and came home saying the professors had it out for him. My father slapped him on the back and said, "College isn't for everyone." When I once got a B- in accounting, he asked if I was losing focus. That was my family. Different rules depending on which child broke them. After graduation, I moved to Columbus and rented a 1-bedroom apartment above a nail salon. The building smelled like acrylic, fried food from the restaurant next door, and old carpet. The radiator clanked all winter. The kitchen had exactly 2 drawers, one of which didn't close all the way. I loved it, because it was mine. No one knocked on my door asking for my debit card. No one opened my mail before I got home. No one told me that being a good daughter meant setting myself on fire so Ethan could stay warm. I got a job as an administrative coordinator at a small hospital. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. Health insurance, paid time off, a retirement account, a paycheck that arrived every other Friday exactly when it was supposed to. I built my life slowly, carefully. I made a spreadsheet called First Home Fund. Every month I put away money for a down payment. Sometimes it was only $200. Sometimes if my car didn't need repairs and no unexpected bill appeared, it was $500. I checked my credit score on the first Sunday of every month. 712, 730, 761. By the time I turned 29, my score was 784. I remember staring at that number on my laptop screen, sitting cross-legged on my thrift store couch and feeling something I almost didn't recognize. Pride. Not loud pride. Not the kind you post online. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing no one handed you anything and you still built something solid. I should have known my parents would see that number differently. To me, it was proof that I had survived them. To them, it was available credit. The first warning came in August, 2 months before the bank email. My mother called on a Tuesday night while I was folding laundry. "Natalie," she said, using the soft voice that always made my stomach tighten, "your brother is trying to get serious about his life." I said nothing. Experience had taught me that silence was safer than questions. "He and Amber are talking about getting engaged," she continued, "and he needs stability. A real home, not some rental with noisy neighbors and no yard." "That's great," I said carefully. "There's a little house in Dayton," she said. "Nothing fancy, just a starter home, $100,000. These days, that's practically nothing." I already knew where this was going. "Mom," I said, "I can't help Ethan buy a house." There was a pause, then a wounded little laugh. "Who said anything about help?" "You did. You always do." Her voice cooled. "That's a very ugly thing to say to your mother." I closed my eyes. There it was, the hook, the guilt, the old rope around my throat. "I'm just setting a boundary," I said. "Boundary," she repeated like the word tasted bitter. "You young people learn one therapy word and use it to abandon everyone who loves you. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm saying I won't co-sign, I won't lend money, and I won't put anything in my name." The silence after that was different, not hurt, calculating. Then my mother sighed. "Fine, Natalie. No one is asking you to put anything in your name." I believed her. That was my mistake, because after we hung up, my parents stopped asking and started planning. The email from Midwest Community Bank came on a Friday at 4:37 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was counting the minutes until I could leave work. It had been one of those hospital days where every phone rang at once, every patient needed to reschedule, every doctor was running behind, and every printer decided to jam like it had a personal grudge against me. I was tired, hungry, already thinking about the frozen lasagna in my freezer and the quiet weekend I had planned. Then I saw the subject line. For one stupid, innocent second, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Some other Brooks, some other Natalie, some other woman whose life was apparently organized enough to be buying property. Then I opened the attachment, and my stomach dropped. My full name was at the top, not just Natalie Brooks, not a typo, not someone else. Me. The document listed a $100,000 home loan for a property on Maple Ridge Road in Dayton. Closing was scheduled for Monday morning at 9. The monthly payment, including taxes and insurance, was listed at $742.18. I stared at that number longer than anything else. $742.18 every month for 30 years. For a house I had never seen. My hand started shaking so badly I hit the wrong key 3 times trying to call the number in the email signature. When a woman answered, I had to swallow twice before I could speak. Midwest Community Bank, this is Grace Whitman. My name is Natalie Brooks, I said. I just received closing documents for a mortgage I didn't apply for. There was a pause, a tiny one, but I heard it. People who work in banks know when something is wrong before they say it out loud. Grace asked for my date of birth, the last 4 digits of my social security number, my current address, my employer. I answered each question, my voice getting smaller with every confirmation. Then she said very carefully, Miss Brooks, are you stating that you did not authorize this mortgage application? I'm stating I have never applied for a mortgage in my life. Another pause. This one was longer. Can you come to the branch today? Today? As soon as possible. I looked at the clock, 4:52. The branch closed at 6. I grabbed my purse so fast my chair rolled backward and hit the cabinet behind me. My coworker Anita looked up from her desk. You okay? No, I said. It was the most honest thing I had said all day. The drive to the bank took 26 minutes. I know because I spent every one of them trying to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe the bank mixed up files. Maybe my parents had only used me as an emergency contact. Maybe someone had stolen my information and mine were somehow listed by mistake. But the closer I got, the harder it became to lie to myself. Because the document had not listed a stranger as the authorized representative. It listed Richard and Linda Brooks, my parents. Grace met me in the lobby. She was in her early 40s, with dark blonde hair pulled into a low bun, and the careful expression of someone trained not to show alarm in front of customers. She shook my hand, but her grip was gentle. Let's step into a conference room. That was when I knew this was worse than a typo. She closed the glass door behind us and placed a thick file on the table. This is the application package we have on record, she said. I need you to review it and tell me what you recognize. The first page was the loan application. My name, my birth date, my social security number, my employer, my salary, all correct. The next pages were worse. 3 months of bank statements from my checking account, pay stubs from the hospital, a scanned copy of my driver's license, a credit authorization form, an e-signature certificate showing that I had signed from an email address I had never created. I stared at the email. My real email was different. This isn't mine, I whispered. Grace nodded once and made a note. Then she turned to another page. This is the limited power of attorney authorizing your father, Richard Brooks, to appear at closing on your behalf. I read the sentence 3 times before it made sense. On my behalf. As if I were busy. As if I had agreed. As if my father had the right to sit in a chair, sign my name, and hand me 30 years of debt. At the bottom of the page was my signature, or something pretending to be my signature. It was close enough to scare me. Whoever wrote it knew how I looped the N in Natalie. They knew I connected the double O in Brooks, but they got the capital B wrong. Too stiff, too flat, like someone had practiced from an old birthday card and almost gotten it right. Almost. My throat burned. I didn't sign this. Grace's face didn't change, but her pen stopped moving. Are you certain? I looked up at her. I know my own name. She nodded again and pulled one more document from the back of the file. This is an internal call note from your mother. The room seemed to narrow around me. I read it slowly. For a moment I couldn't breathe. They had not just forged my name, they had prepared the bank to distrust me. Before I knew the loan existed, my mother had already painted me as unstable, difficult, emotional, and unreliable. She had built a defense against my truth before I even had a chance to speak it. Grace's voice softened. "Ms. Brooks, do you want us to suspend the closing?" I let out a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Suspend it? I looked down at the file. My stolen pay stubs, my stolen bank statements, my copied license, my forged signature, my mother's lie sitting neatly in bank records like it belonged there. "No," I said, "I want it stopped, and I want every page copied." Grace held my gaze for a second, then she stood. "I'll get the fraud department." That was the first time anyone said the word out loud. Fraud, not misunderstanding, not family drama, not helping Ethan. Fraud. And somehow, hearing that word from someone else made my hands finally stop shaking. I sat in my car outside the bank for 11 minutes before I called my mother. The copies of the loan file were on the passenger seat beside me, stacked neatly inside a manila folder Grace had given me. My name was on every page. My future was on every page. My parents' fingerprints were not literally on the paper, but they might as well have been. My thumb hovered over Mom's contact. For one ridiculous second, I still wanted there to be an explanation. A real one. Something messy but not criminal. Something desperate but not cruel. Maybe someone had tricked them. Maybe they had misunderstood. Maybe they thought I had agreed to something months ago and everything had spiraled from there. But then I remembered the internal call note. No, they had known. They had planned for this. Still, I called. My mother answered on the third ring, cheerful and breathless. "Hi, sweetheart. I was just about to start dinner. Everything okay?" I looked through the windshield at the bank's glass doors. "No," I said. "Why is my name on a $100,000 mortgage for a house in Dayton?" Silence. Not confusion, not surprise. Silence. Then my mother sighed. "Natalie?" Just my name, drawn out like I had disappointed her. That told me everything. "You knew," I said. My father's voice came on the line a second later. "Your mother put you on speaker. What exactly do you think you're doing?" I almost laughed. What was I doing? My identity was sitting in a bank file without my permission, and somehow I was the one being questioned. I'm asking why my social security number, my pay stubs, my bank statements, and a forged signature are in a mortgage application I never authorized. "Watch your tone," Dad snapped. There it was, the old reflex. When they couldn't answer the question, they attacked the delivery. "My tone is not the problem." "The problem," he said, "is that your brother needs help and you've become too selfish to care about anyone but yourself." I closed my eyes. Ethan, of course. "It's for Ethan?" My mother jumped back in, her voice trembling now. Not with guilt, with performance. "He and Amber need a stable place to live. They're trying to build a future. That little house is perfect for them." "Then Ethan can buy it." "You know he can't qualify," Dad said. "His credit took a hit. Because he doesn't pay his bills." "He's young. He's 24. He's still figuring life out." I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt, and I'm supposed to pay for him figuring it out? "No one said you'd pay," Mom said quickly. "Ethan would make the monthly payments. Your name would only be on the paperwork for a little while. For 30 years, Mom, the loan is in my name for 30 years. We were going to refinance. With what credit?" Another silence. This one had teeth. Then Dad said, "You always do this. You make everything difficult. If we had asked, you would have said no." I stared at the folder on the passenger seat. There it was, the whole truth, small and ugly. They had not believed they were wrong. They believed my right to say no was the obstacle. "So you forged my signature because you knew I wouldn't agree?" "Don't use that word," Mom whispered. "Forged?" "Natalie, please." "Stole?" Dad's voice turned hard. "Enough." "No," I said, "not enough. Not this time." My voice was shaking, but I kept going. "I did not apply for that loan. I did not give you permission to use my name. I did not authorize you to represent me at closing. And I definitely did not tell the bank I was too anxious to handle my own finances." Mom gasped softly. "How did you see that? Not, that isn't true. Not, I didn't say that. Just how did you see that?" Something inside me went very still. Grace printed the file. Dad cursed under his breath. Mom started crying. I had heard my mother cry so many times that the sound used to twist me open. It used to make me apologize before I even understood what I had done wrong. It used to make me feel like a bad daughter for having boundaries. This time, I felt nothing. No, not nothing. I felt awake. "We were trying to keep the family together," she sobbed. "You don't understand what it's like to watch one child struggle while the other one has everything so easy." Easy. That word hit harder than I expected. My cheap apartment, my old car, my packed lunches, my secondhand furniture, my years of saying no to vacations, new clothes, weekend trips, anything that might slow down my savings. Easy. "You mean I have something because I worked for it?" I said. Dad scoffed. "You think you're better than us." "No, I think my name belongs to me." "You're going to ruin your brother's life over paperwork?" Paperwork? I looked at the loan file. That paperwork would ruin mine. Mom's crying sharpened. "If you stop this closing, Ethan will lose the house. It was never his house. He'll never forgive you." I swallowed. For years that sentence would have worked. The fear of being hated, the fear of being excluded, the fear of being the cold, selfish daughter they always said I was. But sitting there with proof beside me, I finally understood something. They had already excluded me. They had already decided my future was less important than Ethan's comfort. They had already spent my name like money. "Then he'll have to live with that," I said. Dad's voice dropped low. "You need to be very careful, Natalie. Accusing your own parents of fraud is serious. So is committing it." The line went quiet. I heard my mother whisper, "Richard, what do we do?" And for the first time in my life, they sounded scared of me. Not because I was cruel, because I had evidence. "I'm freezing my credit tonight," I said. "I'm filing an identity theft report. I'm speaking to an attorney. From this point forward, do not contact the bank on my behalf. Do not use my name. Do not touch my information." Dad laughed once, cold and sharp. "You don't have the money for a lawyer." I looked down at my hands. They were still shaking, but my voice was steady. "I had money because I didn't spend my life cleaning up Ethan's mistakes. I'll use it to clean up yours." Then I hung up. For 3 whole minutes, nothing happened. Then my phone started buzzing. Mom, Dad, Ethan. Mom again, then Aunt Karen, then a text from Ethan. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Not over a loan, not over stolen documents, not over my social security number, over a signature. That was all I was to them. A signature they thought they were entitled to copy. That night, I learned there are 3 kinds of fear. The first is loud, the kind that makes you cry, shake, call someone, beg for help. The second is quiet, the kind that sits in your chest like a stone while you keep moving because stopping would mean falling apart. The third is colder. That is the fear you feel when you realize someone didn't just hurt you. They studied you first. By 8 p.m., I had frozen my credit with all 3 bureaus. By 8:45, I had changed every password I could think of. Email, banking, payroll portal, credit card apps, my phone passcode. Even the password to the grocery store rewards account hadn't used in 2 years. It felt ridiculous. It also felt necessary, because my parents had my social security number, my bank statements, my pay stubs, my signature. And until that afternoon, I had not understood that the people who raised you can still become strangers with keys to every locked door in your life. At 9:17, I pulled my full credit report. I expected to find the mortgage inquiry. I did. Midwest Community Bank hard inquiry. July 14th, but that wasn't all. There was another inquiry from a personal loan company in August. Denied. A store credit card opened in September. Limit $7,500. A utility account connected to an address in Dayton. And under associated addresses, one line that made my throat close. The house. The house I had never seen. The house my parents had already connected to my name before closing had even happened. I sat on my couch with my laptop balanced on my knees, the blue light washing over my hands. My apartment was silent except for the radiator ticking in the corner. Outside, traffic moved along the street below. Normal people going normal places, while I stared at proof that my parents had been building a second version of me. A fake Natalie. A Natalie who wanted a house in Dayton. A Natalie who trusted Richard and Linda Brooks to sign legal documents for her. A Natalie who was anxious, difficult, and too emotional to speak for herself. I opened the store card account details. The first charge was for a refrigerator, then a washer and dryer, then a gray sectional sofa, delivery address 418 Maple Ridge Road. I laughed once, not because it was funny, because if I didn't laugh, I was going to throw my laptop across the room. They had already started furnishing the house. Ethan had not even moved in yet, and somehow my credit was already buying his appliances. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom, then another. Then Ethan. I turned my phone face down. For the first time in my life, their panic did not become my emergency. At 7:30 the next morning, I called the hospital payroll office before my shift started. "Has anyone requested copies of my pay stubs recently?" I asked. The woman on the phone hesitated. "Your employee portal shows downloads on July 10th, August 2nd, and September 4th. My stomach twisted. "I downloaded one in July," I said slowly. "Not the others. Your login was used." I already knew when it had happened. In August, my mother had come to Columbus for lunch. She said she needed to print photos for a church memorial board and asked to use my laptop. I had been making coffee in the kitchen while she sat at my desk. I remembered her calling out, "Honey, what's your printer password?" I remembered typing it in for her. I did not remember logging out of anything. By noon, I had scheduled a consultation with a lawyer named Daniel Price. His website said he handled identity theft, consumer fraud, and financial disputes. His office was downtown, on the 6th floor of a building that smelled like old paper and coffee. He listened without interrupting. That was the first thing I noticed. My parents never let me finish a sentence. Daniel let me finish the whole story. When I was done, he spread the documents across his desk. The mortgage application, the fake email address, the limited power of attorney, the credit report, the store card charges, the internal note from my mother. His expression grew harder with every page. Finally, he leaned back. "Natalie, this is not a misunderstanding." "I know." "No," he said. "I need you to really hear me. This is identity theft, attempted mortgage fraud, likely forgery, possibly wire fraud depending on how the documents were submitted." Hearing the words from him made my chest tighten, not because I was surprised, because a part of me had still been waiting for someone to say, "It's not that bad." Daniel tapped the limited power of attorney. "This is the most important document. If this signature is forged, and if the notarization is false, your parents didn't just lie to the bank. They created a legal instrument to take control of your name." I looked at the page. The notary stamp was from a woman named Paula Jennings. I knew that name. "She goes to my mother's church," I said. "They run the bake sale together every spring." Daniel made a note. "Do you have proof you weren't present when this was notarized?" I thought for a second. Then I remembered. "That was September 4th, I said. "I was at work all day." "Time card?" "Yes." "Badge scans?" "At every hospital entrance." "Security cameras?" "Probably." For the first time since the email arrived, Daniel smiled. Not warmly. Strategically. "Good," he said. "Then they made their first serious mistake." I looked at him. "What happens now?" "Now," he said, stacking the papers into a clean pile, "we stop the closing permanently. We notify the bank in writing, we file an identity theft report, we subpoena records if we need to, and we make sure your parents understand that guilt may work at Thanksgiving, but it does not work in court." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt sad, heavy. Because sitting in that office, surrounded by proof, I finally understood the truth. My parents had not crossed a line. They had crossed dozens. I had just found the paperwork. By Sunday night, my parents stopped pretending this was about family. That was when it became war. Not loud at first, not obvious. My mother was too careful for that. At 8:12 p.m., she posted on Facebook. She didn't use my name. She didn't have to. Within 20 minutes, Aunt Karen commented. Then my father's cousin wrote, "Paperwork," that word again, as if my social security number was paperwork, as if a forged signature was paperwork, as if 30 years of debt could be folded neatly, placed in a drawer and forgotten because my mother had posted a sad paragraph with a praying hands emoji. I sat on my couch and watched the comments appear one by one. People who had never asked how I paid for college. People who had never noticed when my parents took my savings. People who remembered me only when they needed someone to blame. My phone rang. Aunt Karen. I let it go to voicemail. Then Uncle Rob. Then Ethan. Then Mom. Then Dad. I turned the phone over and kept screenshots of everything. Daniel had told me to document, not respond. So I documented. At 9:43, Ethan showed up at my apartment. I knew it was him before I checked the peephole because he knocked like he was trying to break the door off its hinges. "Natalie," he shouted, "open the door!" I stood barefoot in my hallway, heart pounding. "Go home, Ethan." "You're really doing this?" he yelled through the door. "You're really going to ruin my life because you're mad at Mom?" "I'm not opening the door. You think you're so much better than us." The neighbor across the hall cracked her door open. Ethan saw her and lowered his voice, but not enough. "That house was supposed to be mine," he hissed. "No," I said. "It was supposed to be bought with my name. You weren't even going to live there. Why do you care?" I stared at the door. For a second, I almost opened it just to see his face when I answered. Instead, I said through the wood, because it was my credit, my income, my signature, my future. He laughed bitterly. "You don't even need it. You're single. You don't have kids. You don't have anyone depending on you." There it was, the family math. Ethan's wants counted more than my needs because his life looked more important to them. A girlfriend, a possible engagement, a future they could brag about. I was just the responsible one, which meant I was expected to absorb the damage. I called the police non-emergency line. Ethan left before officers arrived, but my neighbor gave a statement and the hallway camera caught him pounding on my door. Another piece of paper, another record, another thing my family didn't expect me to have. Monday morning, I wore the same navy blazer I had worn to my job interview at the hospital. It was the closest thing I owned to armor. Daniel met me outside Midwest Community Bank at 8:41 a.m. "You ready?" he asked. "No." He nodded. "Good. Ready people underestimate things. Scared people pay attention." That almost made me smile. Almost. Through the glass doors, I saw them. My father in a gray suit, standing too straight. My mother in a cream sweater, holding a folder against her chest. Ethan slouched in a chair near the waiting area, scrolling through his phone like he was bored by the collapse of my life. When Mom saw me, her face softened instantly. Performance mode. "Natalie," she said, stepping toward me with open arms. "Thank God. We can still fix this." I stepped back, her arms froze in the air. Daniel moved beside me. "I'm Daniel Price, Miss Brooks's attorney." My father's expression changed. Not much, just enough. A tightening around the mouth, a quick glance at my mother, the first visible crack in his confidence. "This is a family matter," Dad said. Daniel smiled politely. "No, Mr. Brooks, this is a banking matter, a fraud matter, and potentially a criminal matter." Ethan stood up. "Are you serious right now?" I looked at him. For years I had seen him as the careless little brother I was supposed to protect from consequences. That morning I saw a grown man angry that stolen money had not arrived on schedule. Grace appeared from the hallway. "Miss Brooks, Mr. Price, we're ready for you." We followed her into the same conference room where I had first seen the file. This time, 2 other people were waiting. A man from the bank's fraud department and a woman from legal compliance. There was a small recorder on the table. A red light blinked. My father saw it. "What is that?" The fraud investigator folded his hands. "This meeting is being recorded with consent from the bank and Ms. Brooks. You are free to leave at any time." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe you're doing this to us," she whispered. I sat down across from her. "I didn't put my name on that loan," I said. "You did." Daniel opened his briefcase. One by one, he laid the documents on the table. The mortgage application, the fake email address, the phone number linked to my mother, the store card charges, the delivery receipts for appliances sent to Maple Ridge Road, my hospital time card from the day the power of attorney was supposedly notarized, my badge scans showing I had entered the hospital at 7:56 a.m. and left at 5:18 p.m. Then he placed the notarized document in the center. "Mr. and Mrs. Brooks," he said, "before we proceed, I want to give you both the opportunity to explain how Natalie signed a document in Dayton while she was physically at work in Columbus." No one spoke. Not my mother, not my father, not Ethan. For the first time in my entire life, my family had nothing to say. Grace looked at me. "For the record, Miss Brooks, did you authorize this mortgage application?" I felt my mother staring at me. I felt my father daring me to back down. I felt 29 years of guilt pressing against my ribs. Then I leaned toward the recorder. "No," I said, "I did not." Grace continued. "Did you authorize Richard or Linda Brooks to sign documents on your behalf?" "No." Did you provide your social security number, pay stubs, bank statements, or driver's license for this application? I looked at my parents. My mother was crying silently now. My father's face had gone red. Ethan was staring at the table. No, I said. They stole them. Dad slammed his palm against the table. That's enough! The fraud investigator did not flinch. Instead, he looked directly at my father and said, Mr. Brooks, I need to remind you this meeting is being recorded. And just like that, my father sat back down. Quietly, like a man finally realizing the room no longer belonged to him. The closing never happened. At 9:23 that morning, Midwest Community Bank officially suspended the loan. By 10:15, the file had been transferred to their fraud department. By noon, Daniel had sent formal notices to the bank, the credit bureaus, the store card company, the utility provider, and the county recorder's office. By 3 p.m., my parents were calling me again. I didn't answer. For the first time in my life, I let their panic stay with them. That evening, Daniel called. The bank is cooperating fully, he said. They confirmed the application was submitted from an IP address connected to your parents' home internet. The fake email account has your mother's phone number as the recovery number, and the e-signature certificate was completed from the same device used to upload your pay stubs. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the folder in front of me. So what happens now? Now they have a choice, he said. They can admit what they did and try to minimize the damage, or they can keep lying and make it worse. They kept lying. Of course they did. My father told the bank I had verbally agreed months earlier and was changing my mind because of emotional issues. My mother claimed I had asked her to help organize the documents because I was bad with paperwork. Ethan said he didn't know anything about the loan, even though Daniel later found text messages where he had written, "Then Paula Jennings, the notary from my mother's church, became the loose thread that pulled the whole thing apart." At first, Paula insisted I had signed the power of attorney in front of her. Then Daniel sent her my hospital time card, badge scan at 7:56 a.m., lunch break at the hospital cafeteria at 12:14 p.m., badge scan leaving work at 5:18 p.m. Security footage available if needed. The notarization had supposedly happened at 2:30 p.m. in Dayton. I was 70 miles away, wearing a hospital ID badge and eating a turkey sandwich under fluorescent lights. 2 days later, Paula changed her statement. She admitted my mother had brought her the document already signed. Linda told her it was just a family form, that I had agreed, that I was too busy to come in person. Paula said she trusted her. That trust cost her notary commission, and it cost my parents their last defense. The police report became a criminal investigation. The bank filed its own complaint. The credit card company reversed the appliance charges. The utility account was removed from my name. The mortgage inquiry was disputed and flagged as fraudulent. It took weeks, long, exhausting weeks. I mailed certified letters. I sat on hold for hours. I repeated the same sentence so many times it started to sound unreal. My identity was used without my consent. Every time I said it, a small part of me got stronger. My parents eventually accepted a plea deal. Attempted mortgage fraud, identity theft, forgery-related charges reduced in exchange for cooperation and restitution. No dramatic trial, no screaming courtroom confession. Just two people standing before a judge, forced to say out loud what they had spent months denying. Yes, they used my information. Yes, they submitted documents without my permission. Yes, they allowed a forged power of attorney to be used. Yes, they intended to close on the property in my name. My mother cried through the whole hearing. My father stared straight ahead. Ethan didn't come. They were sentenced to probation, fines, restitution for my legal fees, and a permanent criminal record. My father lost his job at the dealership. My mother was removed from the church finance committee. Paula Jennings lost her commission. Ethan lost the house he had already bragged about owning. And me? I lost something too. I lost the last small, stubborn belief that one day my parents would look at me and see a daughter instead of a resource. But I gained something bigger. My name back. 6 months later, my credit report was clean again. Not perfect, clean. Every fraudulent account removed, every inquiry explained, every false address deleted. My score was lower than before, but it was mine. Real, honest, rebuilding. On a cold Saturday morning in April, I signed closing papers for a small condo in Columbus. 1 bedroom, Old hardwood floors, a kitchen window that faced a brick wall, a radiator that hissed like an angry cat. It was not impressive. It was not the kind of place my mother would post online. But when the title officer slid the final page toward me and pointed to the signature line, I stared at my name printed underneath. No one else's hand holding the pen, no one else's permission, no one else's plan hiding behind mine. Just me. I signed slowly, every letter deliberate. The B in Brooks curved exactly the way it was supposed to. That night, I sat on the living room floor with takeout noodles, a plastic fork, and a set of keys beside me. My phone buzzed once, a message from my mother. I looked around the empty condo, the bare walls, the boxes, the quiet. Then I blocked her number, because she was wrong. I didn't get what I wanted. I wanted parents who loved me without trying to use me. I wanted a brother who saw me as a person, not a backup plan. I wanted a family that didn't confuse boundaries with betrayal. But I got what I needed. My name, my credit, my future, my peace. My parents used my name on a $100,000 home loan because they thought I was too guilty to fight back. They were wrong. They thought a signature was just ink. They forgot it belonged to a person. And this time, that person finally signed herself free.